What is up, guys? So I just seen John Wick Chapter 4 on a Friday. Decided to go with more of an audience. I just want to see the reactions and that stuff too. I kind of missed it from going on Thursday nights, but I went to AMC theaters. This is the first time I actually went to AMC, and I actually had a pretty good experience. The popcorn wasn't the best, but how the rows were set up, we were kind of a little closer to the screen than I usually am. And honestly, it's a curved screen at this AMC theater that I went to, and it was a great presentation. No complaints by how it actually fucking looked, because some of the other theaters I've been going to weren't the best presentation wise, but the audience wasn't bad at all either. There were cheer moments or clap moments, so I was happy with it. But let's break down John Wick Chapter 4. John Wick uncovers a path to defeating the High Table, but before he can earn his freedom, Wick must face off against a new enemy with powerful alliances across the whole globe, and forces that turn his friends into foes. That's basically the synopsis of it. So this film is directed, once again, the fourth installment is directed by Chad Stahelski, I believe that's how you say his name, and it stars Keanu Reeves, Lawrence Fishburne, the late Lance Reddick, Ian McShane, Bill Skarsgård, and Donnie Yen, and a bunch of other fucking people that we'll get into in a minute. But let's get right out of the way. This film is 2 hours and 49 minutes. So this is the longest John Wick film to date. I went into this film thinking, is this going to be too long? But honestly, guys, this is the perfect runtime for this film. I didn't even feel it at all. There was no dragging points through the middle of the film or anything like that. A little nitpick that I'll have in the first act, but we'll get into that in just a second. Another thing that I want to talk about is the film itself. Cinematography wise, whoever the cinematographer was, I have to look up his name after this. He did a phenomenal job. This film is probably the best looking John Wick film ever. There's shots in there's a night, and here's one that stood out to me. There's a nightclub sequence where John Wick's going after this one guy, and he's got to get him back, or kill him basically, right? And the rain and the sequence and the visual, it just looks so fucking rich and beautiful. And there's so many things in this film that just look beautiful and at awe to watch. It's beautiful shots, beautiful visuals, beautiful. Honestly, the cinematography, definitely, that's a standout that was in this film. As for like the CGI aspect of it, there's some CGI points. There's a beginning sequence in the first act that takes place in the desert, and the CGI, I'll be honest, didn't look the best, but throughout the rest of the film, it looked fucking top, like best I've ever seen. As for the story goes, I will have to say that the story was fucking awesome. This is probably the best story out of the sequels, I would say, for John Wick. I really love the story, and I'll get into that in just a second, more about the story. But I also want to talk about the gunplay and the action in this film, the camera shots that they chose. There's a sequence I'll talk about in my spoiler section of this video, but there's a sequence that is like a top shot, and it's like a consecutive shot that goes on for almost like 3 or 4 minutes, and it was fucking done well. And there's a lot of unique things in this film that are with the gunplay this time around, and the fight sequences that are beautifully well choreographed. It's awesome. Let's talk about Keanu himself. Keanu brings his all in this film, as every film he has in the John Wick franchise. Every single stunt is done beautifully well and acted well. The way that Keanu, we all know how he acts, so it's done really well. But I have to say, another standout is Donnie Yen playing the blind assassin in this film. He was a complete badass, and I'll talk a little bit more about him in spoilers and where I think, or what about his character, what I liked a lot about him. I also love seeing Hiroyuki Sanada. I love him. He is awesome, and I liked him as Scorpion in Mortal Kombat, but he pops up in like Bullet Train, in these films that you wouldn't expect him to be in. He popped up in this one, and once again, he's a fucking badass. Anything he's in, he's a phenomenal actor and martial artist, so I thought it was really cool to see him and Keanu again. I think they were in together 47 Ronin, which was not really a great film, but it was good just to see them two back in this film, or working or on screen together. We also have the addition of his daughter, played by Rina Sawarma, who is also a badass too, and I'll talk a little bit more about her in the spoiler section as well. But like I was saying before, all stunts, fight sequences, action sequences, set pieces are phenomenal. It's John Wick. What do you expect? But they did it really well. I gotta say. The one thing that I noticed is we're on the 4th film now, and they keep topping the action from John Wick 1 to now. Everything, it felt like it was going on an upward slope, and that's so nice just to fucking say. It really is. I want to talk about the nightclub sequence. A couple sequences that did stand out to me, like I said before, the nightclub sequences. The 3rd act before the duel takes place. There's a duel in the film, which I'll talk more about in spoilers, but there's a duel in the film, and these sequences in the 3rd act that lead up to it, they really stood out to me, and they're really intense, and it was fucking awesome. The score, once again, was phenomenal. I prefer the score in John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. I really like that score for some reason out of all 4 films. The score was pretty fucking good, though. It was, it fit the tone of the film that it was going for. And like I said, guys, beautiful to look at. Now, my only minor negatives that I have with this film are 2 things. The first thing I would say is the pacing in the 1st act of the film took a tiny bit. This is a nitpick, right? Because for the rest of the film, 2 hour and 49 minute, you don't feel any pacing issues. But there's this a little tiny bit that took it to get going a little bit there in the 1st act. And I think I wanted a little bit more Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King in the film. He's not in the film that much, and he wasn't in John Wick Chapter 3 that much as well, so I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of him in this film, but it is what it is. I still had a blast with this film. But overall, guys, before we get into spoilers, because there's a lot that I want to talk about in spoilers, if I'm going to have to give John Wick Chapter 4 a rating for me, I think it's a perfect film. I really do. I'm looking over the nitpicks because I had a blast with this film. This is the kind of action film that you want to go see. It's a summer blockbuster, but we're in spring basically. But it's got a great fucking story, and it's got an amazing fucking action sequences, fight sequences, and it's just fun. It really is. So with that being said, I am giving John Wick Chapter 4 a 10 out of 10. It deserves it. It really does. And I really love the film. I'll probably even go back and see it again. Alright guys, so here's the spoiler section. There's going to be an icon right up there that says spoilers, so let's get into spoilers. So we have a new character that I really actually want to talk about, played by Shamir Anderson, who is called the Tracker. And I gotta say, I really did love his character. I found it interesting, this type of character that ends up going around and helping John out just so the bounty gets up higher for him. So then he ends up, like, say the bounty's at 15 million, it was at like 20 million in the film, and then it got up to 26 million. That's when he wanted to kill him, and then he just kept getting it raised and raised and raised. But because as the people as John keeps killing people and he keeps killing people for John, the bounty's going to go up and up and up. And I thought that was a really cool character. And he's also got a dog with him as well, and John ends up saving that dog in the end, which makes sense. And then that guy ends up being on John's side overall, which I thought was really cool. But as you guys know, I was heartbroken to hear the passing of Lance Reddick. But in this film, unfortunately, he does get killed. His character does get killed off by Marquise, Bill Skarsgård's character, which I'll talk about in a minute. He does end up getting killed off while the New York Continental gets destroyed in front of Winston, which basically sets up Marquise's character to be easily unlikable and can't fucking stand him. So Bill Skarsgård, I have to say, did a phenomenal job in making his character look like a fucking asshole and a piece of shit. So he did a good job, I have to say. As well as I did want to speak on this is what I want to talk about with so many awesome action sequences, set pieces. So there's a sequence that I was talking about earlier, and it takes place in this consecutive top view camera angle shot that really stood out to me. It was very unique, and it went on for about 3 or 4 minutes, but John gets these, I don't know, I think it was a shotgun, dragon bullets with it, and he's fucking shooting these guys left and right, and it looked visually pleasing. And I have to say, the gore in the film is beautiful. It really is. There's another sequence that really stood out to me. There's a stair sequence. So basically, to sum it up for you guys, John has got to get to the church before the duel starts, but they end up swarming all these guys, which you guys know. They end up swarming all Marquise gets a higher bounty and gets all these people to try to get John to not make it to the church, so he ends up failing overall, right? So there's a lot of sequences here. There's a Paris fucking sequence where John is riding around in a car, and he's hitting people left and right and shooting people, and there's so many sequences that this pop up in my head. When I'm gonna have a stroke. No, he ends up drifting his car and he picks up the gun, like he's got his hand out there, picks up the gun, starts shooting more people. It's fucking awesome. It's fucking Keanu Reeves. It's fucking a badass. But no, the one para sequence, I forgot what that's called when they're in that one circle, but that was really fucking cool. You got guys getting hit by cars left and right. They're fucking all out shooting right there. But the stair sequence I want to speak about. The stair sequence with John and Kane was fucking dope. And Kane was a badass, a blind assassin that fucking is killing people with this cane sword, and he's got a gun, and he's awesome, and he's likable. That's the problem. And like I was saying though, let's talk a little bit more about the ending, because the ending really relies heavily on John and Kane. But like, so here's the thing. So they raised that bounty from $26 million to $40 million as that midnight, as Marquise sets that bounty, and John's trying to make it to the church in time. And Kane ends up helping him get to the church, but we knew that the duel at this point was between John and Kane. And I found that stair sequence to be unique with John and Kane, Kane helping John out. But in the end of the day, they are friends, and the fact that they have to do this duel because Marquise pussied out is kind of fucked up. Just saying. But I also gotta say though, like when we finally get to this sequence with the church and the duel is about to take place, I thought this was a unique thing as well. Besides all the awesome action set pieces or sequences that led up to the point in the third act, you kind of know what's gonna happen. You gotta think that Kane is fighting for his daughter and his freedom, and John's only fighting for his freedom, and you can kind of sense what's going to happen for the most part. And we end up seeing basically John get hit in 3 spots, so did Kane, but the third hit that Kane shot right here at him ended up having John bleed out, but John saved his bullet, and then Marquise goes up to try and kill John, and it was a fucking crowd-pleasing moment. He fucking bullet right to the head. We see that they both end up, as John's still living at that point, we see that Kane is granted his freedom with his daughter's freedom as well to be safe, and John gets his freedom as well. We see John start to walk up to Winston. You can tell that Winston is really upset. I was wondering at first, I'm like, why is Winston just standing there? But then you can tell by his eyes he's very emotional, and you can see that John goes up to Winston and tells him to take him home. Then he ends up starting to walk down the stairs, but he can't make it, and he ends up dying by the sunrise. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, at this point in the film, to the grave sequence with Winston and the Bowery King and his dog, yeah, it was emotional, and I almost teared up. It just shows how invested you get in these characters in films, and you love every second of it. And Keanu's just a likable dude, and just seeing that, it hit me in the right place, I guess you would say. I feel like but overall, this is why I'm satisfied with it. This film earned John Wick's death. I feel like when you have these films, right? These films usually end with a trilogy. That's why I thought Parabellum was going to be its end, and I wasn't 100%. I was excited, but wasn't 100% on board with a chapter 4. But most films these days don't have the balls to kill off their main protagonist, even in their 4th film or 3rd film. And it gets overly tiresome when they keep going for a John Wick 5, 6, 7, and 8. And like, if you want to compare it to a Fast and Furious film, it ends up getting fucking tiring. It gets redundant for the most part. So honestly, I'm happy how this film ended and turned out, even though I was really emotional to see John die. He does get his freedom. He ends up going back to see his wife probably in heaven. There's a little joke at the end where the Bowery King says to Winston, where do you think he is, heaven or hell? And Winston says, who knows? And which I thought was kind of funny. But honestly, like I said, I think the title of this film, when it comes out on 4K or anything, is going to be called John Wick Chapter 4: A Way Out, because I think that sets the title, or sets the stage for this whole film's message and theme. But as for the end credits of the film, we see Kane walking up to his daughter in Akira, which is Akira. So as for the end credits, we see Kane walking up to his daughter while Akira promised John in this train sequence that if you don't kill Kane, that she will kill him. And we see her approach Kane with a knife, and then it cuts to black, which Kane sensed it already. So this is one of those scenes that I feel it doesn't need to be continued onto another spin-off for John Wick or anything like that. This is a film that this is a scene that could be left in your interpretation. Now they very well might continue this little storyline, maybe a spin-off or something like that, but I think for the most part that what they're gonna do is end up leaving it into your own interpretation. I don't see how you can make a John Wick Chapter 5 without John Wick, unless they just do a whole spin-off. I don't know how many people will want to go see that. I really don't. I know this film's gonna make a lot of fucking money. I might even make a short about how much money it ends up making. But overall, guys, I had a blast with John Wick Chapter 4. If you guys seen it, let me know your thoughts below. What's your favorite sequence in the film? Did you guys enjoy it? And pretty soon, I'm going to be making my ranking, all four John Wick films from least to greatest. But thanks for watching, guys. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.